I'm Brandon Amoroso, and this is the D2Z podcast, building and growing your business from a Gen Z perspective. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to D2Z, a podcast about using the Gen Z mindset to grow your business. I'm Gen Z entrepreneur Brandon Amoroso, founder and president of retention as a service e-commerce agency Electric. Today, I'm joined with Dan Sweeney, Chief Operating Officer of Torque Detail, one of the leading automotive detailing product companies really in the entire US, and a close friend from San Diego, actually, before I made the leap across the country to the other coast. So thanks for coming on, Dan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been fun to watch you really grow up and blow up the past few years.
I'm just making it up as I go here.
Yeah, all the D2Z branding does make me feel old.
So before we jump into some of the topics that we want to cover today, can you give everybody just a quick background on you and sort of your start in e-com?
Yeah, so got started in marketing when I was 17. I launched a course about how to get your ex back. So got my start in the affiliate marketing space before I was 18. Did some training for ClickBank along the way, eventually got into consulting for 2 years, which really polished my project management skills and just some of the finer points. Like some marketers can be a little sloppy. Took those skills, had two friends that launched a brand called Torque Detail, and they had really just one SKU when they had launched it. With my analytics background and my consulting background, I was able to see there's a lot to this product and was able to work with them. They were very good at the traffic side. I was very good at the conversion side and grow that into an 8-figure brand.
So what is Torque Detail for everybody that's listening?
Yeah, so Torque Detail is car detailing supplies. So I kind of describe it as fancy premium car wax. So you get people that will clean their cars. You know, a lot of us, when you think about cleaning your cars, maybe you're thinking Dawn dish soap and like a cheap sponge that you'd wash your parents' cars with. But it's this massive market, people that love their cars and love to spend lots of time on their cars. And recently, especially the past 5 years, the market's changed a lot. People are getting these things called ceramic coatings on their car, which is essentially like a thin clear coat. It costs around $2,000 to have it professionally installed, but you can buy a kit for around $100 to do it yourself. And that's just kind of blown up the market. As technology has gotten better, it's gotten easier, more accessible, and I'd argue more fun for someone to do it themselves.
Got it. What does the ceramic do? Does it just protect the underlying paint?
Yeah, so essentially a clear coat is like an artificial layer on top of the paint. And that's what keeps your shine, and it's almost a sacrificial layer. So as that starts to go away more and more, then you get closer to the paint, and that's when you have less shine and you have more problems. And like if you get a scratch, just think of it as like a 7-layer dip, right? You have your layer on top, and the deeper it goes, the worse the scratch is. So to use the example, you got a Tesla recently, right?
Yeah.
So Teslas are notorious for having what's called soft paint, which means they skimp on the clear coat. So they have some of the historically least amounts of clear coat. So less clear coat, less protection.
That would explain the nice little chip I already have in the front of my car from a road trip, not even me doing anything. So yeah, that's awesome. I should have chatted with you before going ahead and making that leap.
Yeah. Well, it's cost, and it's one of the things we play up in some of our marketing is greedy car companies are cutting back on the clear coat they're using, and there's the marketing hype to it, but it is actually factual. That's one of the ways that people are cutting and reducing costs, or the car manufacturers rather.
So did Torque always start out as e-commerce, or was there any sort of like in-store and retail component before?
Correct. So always been e-commerce. When we launched our first hero product, which was Mirror Shine, it was on Amazon as well as our own Shopify store. So we've always had a select amount of SKUs on Amazon. FBA is the way that we approach it. And then recently, as of 2 years ago, I forget when exactly, because it was during the pandemic, but Advanced Auto Parts called us up. We worked out a deal with them and got our products into stores, which was a massive learning experience. Because people don't really talk about that. I feel like you're either at maybe a $50 million level and you're in stores, but for the smaller brands, I don't really feel like they talk about that as much.
Are you guys still in Auto Trader?
Correct. Advanced Auto Parts, we have 2 products in stores as of now. We just did a line review, so we are trying to get more products into stores and into other retailers.
Got it. So would you say that's an area of focus for you guys going into next year?
Once we saw the profit from it, yes. It's one of those things that like the revenue isn't as big of a lift as you would want it to be. And I'm wondering if there's anything I can't say or can say with them, but basically when they place a new product in store, they place a very large order. And from that large order, I mean, again, the margins and the profit is pretty good. It does depend on the product. And one of the biggest things for me is, D2C, it's all just distribution at the end of the day, right? So there's different ways you can distribute to the customer. And like, if you have an energy drink that costs $2, that's pretty hard to get into the customer's hands, right? That's where you use a convenience store, quickie mart, that kind of stuff. But to use our example, 16-ounce bottle of anything costs us $8 to $10 to ship. Mm-hmm. So if I only have a $20 bottle and it costs someone, I'm paying for it or you're paying for it, it's hard to get into the customer's hands. So that's where in Advanced Auto Parts, you're able to leverage their distribution network, similar with an Amazon, and you can get a bottle like that into the customer's hands. And let's say maybe it costs $2 to get into their hands, shipping costs. Well, we just remove $6 from the costs, which you can then take from the markup, the markdown, and all that.
Right. That makes sense. I assume for you guys that trying to do bundles and as many different ways to increase AOV on the orders that do go through your e-com shop is pretty important, given that.
Exactly. Yeah. AOV is, that's the name of the game, as and probably most people listening to this podcast know. But that's where the flip side is distribution. And it's like, again, if I'm selling a single bottle of something that's $20, it could be a good product, but how can I get it into their hands in a way that works for both of us? And that's where an Amazon can come in, retail can come in.
Yeah. Especially with people going back in person and doing stuff, there's certain things that I don't really want to shop for online. I'd rather get the in-store experience. And I feel like, especially for me, you obviously have like a fair amount of education on like your website, but coming from somebody who has no idea what the hell they're doing when it comes to taking care of a car, it could be nice to like go into a store where theoretically there should be somebody there who has even an ounce of a clue of what to do. And that's an experience that can't really be replicated, I don't think, online.
Yeah. And, large competitor chemical guys, maybe the largest in the space. I don't know, because, numbers aren't always public, but they have, I don't know how many locations. I want to say over 100 at least, of their own locations, which basically just sell their own products. So that's how kind of big the industry is that even if you're a D2C brand, they have their own stores, and they're also in Advanced Auto Parts. So, And again, it's all kind of just accessibility. And with these kind of products, it is the kind of thing that someone wants to go into the store and be able to buy if they can.
And it's marketing credibility. Like I see it here on your homepage, for example, like you can use that logo to drive online sales as well, because people are if they've never heard of Torque before, they're definitely going to be, there's going to be a higher likelihood they've heard of Advanced Auto Parts than there is of Torque. So for that like net new customer acquisition, I'm sure that helps out a lot too.
Yeah, I always joke with my mentor who knows my sales numbers, doesn't really bat an eye. And I told him we got Advanced Auto Parts, and he's like, "Oh, wow." So there's still that credibility factor and that realness factor of, getting into stores. And again, the Krogers of the world, the Walmarts, the volume of product that they can push is really hard for some people to fathom, because you're just not in those, stores.
Right. How did they approach you? Did you approach them? How does it even work getting into like retail?
Yeah. So typically our situation was unique. So typically there's a retail buyer, and you might kind of spam these people on LinkedIn. So you'll have a category buyer. Like I just found a category buyer for Walmart and I added him on LinkedIn. We'll see if he responds to my messages or not. But in our case, we were really just hitting the internet hard with YouTube. We had a lot of success with YouTube early on. And she was joking with us. She's like, "Yeah, I was trying to watch a crochet video and this stupid Torque video keeps popping up." And she's like, "I got to get these guys in the stores." So in our case, it was actually, they kind of came to us because we were like the hot new brand, but We had also done, a ton of advertising. At some point on YouTube, we were literally just doing open targeting to the entire United States, to give you an example. So that's how we got in. And then through that, now we have a retail partner, and it's kind of, they're like your certified liaison, and they take a cut, and they also have connections with other brands. So then they can make introductions. And then, it's definitely a new area where we're still learning how to kind of break into more spots.
Yeah, I feel like once you have your foot in the door of one of them, though, that gives others the credibility or almost the fear, like, oh, wow, like they have them. Maybe we should be carrying them as well.
It was, out of everything I've done in business, it was definitely the single worst thing I've ever had to do. Getting like the insurance set up, the proper, SKU set up, UPC, like just so much paperwork. It was a nightmare and just really tough. But after you do it once, yeah, you definitely understand everything better. And you learn the pitching process. Like, how to pitch to them, what they're looking for, as far as cost wise, and it makes the whole process a lot smoother.
Yeah, it's definitely an area that we don't really touch on at all. And it just feels like it's with e-commerce, there's very like direct inputs and outputs. Whereas with, I think, getting into retail, it's more of like an art than it is necessarily like you can't base it off of data or really anything in terms of performance. So
yeah, and there's, we talked to someone else in the space, CrossNet, he's down by you. So he's kind of a Foursquare volleyball game. So he has a pretty strong retail presence, but they do a lot of education, in-store pop-ups. Like, they're doing a lot of in-store advertising to help increase those sales. And that's something that we've looked into, as we've tried to figure out, how can we drive our own sales? How can we even drive traffic? But that's where, some of these incumbent partners, when you're like, hey, we want to do a sponsored blog post, they don't get that. And it's hard to sometimes get through that red tape. So.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting applications for SMS and like being able to geolocate your database. So if you do those in-store activations, you can send out a text and get people within a 20-mile radius to go and engage and start to try and build out some of that community aspect. I mean, I assume there's a lot of potential like community building that could happen with something like this. I'm sure there's a bunch of car groups and other stuff like that that could be tapped into.
Yeah, and some of it too is just kind of getting the word out, is how I see it sometimes. If you've got a large customer base, we skew towards an older demographic. If they tell their friends, hey, you can get Mirashine Advanced Auto Parts now, that's going to drive more sales, right? It just becomes that much more accessible. They don't have to go to our website. And I think it can kind of create this, organic viral effect by having it be in stores. It just makes it that much more accessible.
So if all the advertising sort of changes that have been happening over the last year, what are some of the marketing tactics that are working for you from an e-commerce perspective?
Yeah, I mean, the bread and butter, and I kind of say that I'll die on this hill, is landing pages. I don't know why it's not more commonly discussed. Like, it baffles my mind. I have a lot of friends that drive traffic, and really what you're doing is you're taking your entire website and you're squeezing it into a single page, and then you're taking them along on a journey. So, I kind of describe it's like a Disney ride when you're on the tracks, but I'm controlling what you can see and in what order that you're seeing it. And what that does as well is it allows you to split tests so much better and just show the offer in different ways. So like our main landing page is a 1-3-5 bottle format. What that does, as you know, is increases the AOV. If we didn't have that 3 bottle, we wouldn't be in business. So landing pages are absolutely huge. There's a couple of different ways you can go about it. But landing pages is probably the number one tip I think I have on that side. And again, too, it just, there's a certain way you can treat your product pages, but a landing page creates more of a funnel atmosphere. And now you're aware, hey, if someone hit this landing page, they're really interested in this specific product, and I can retarget them, or if I get their email, I can hit them with other information based on that specific product and kind of keep them in that track.
That makes sense. I think for me, like landing pages give you way more control too. Like you can test it over and over again. You can create different landing pages for different like segments. I don't know if you like target small cars versus pickup trucks or something like that. Just making the content more relevant for whoever you're trying to get into your funnel. But like, what's like the minimum spend you need on a monthly basis for a landing page for it to even make sense? Because that's an issue that we ran into with a couple brands where, like, sure, they've got a bunch of personas and a bunch of different targets that we could go after, but if you can't spend enough money on each landing page and on each test, then you're not going to be able to do anything with it.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I don't honestly almost say zero, only in the sense of my email traffic goes to landing pages. All of my traffic goes to landing pages, and we definitely live in a unique ecosystem in that sense, where we're not as PDP focused, product display page focused. But I think for someone that's starting out, obviously, if you have no sales, it's not really going to work. But people that are struggling to scale, it's because they don't have the offer dialed in. And I think having a landing page takes you down that process of, well, what is the offer? And I think in D2C, in my opinion, there's too much like, this is an organic face cream versus like, this is going to make you sexier, more beautiful, and younger. Like, there's way too much kind of feature selling versus benefit selling. And it's like too much selling the thing versus selling the solution or selling the result.
That's interesting, because I read something the other day that basically was saying your customers don't really give a shit about your product. They care about what it's going to do for them and the benefits and everything, which makes sense. It's just sometimes like framing it in that mindset can help you figure out what to do there. But I found like your emails fascinating because they're extremely copy heavy, and compared to most of the CPG brands that we work with who want like all these fancy image-based designs, pretty light on copy, more like sort of, I don't know, it's much more visual, whereas yours is almost like a journey in the email of storytelling. How did you end up going with that route versus your standard, I don't know, if you look at like an apparel company, like image-based, not a lot of content? Yeah. What sort of led you down that path?
Yeah. So I will say apparel's a bit of a more tricky one, because in that sense, you kind of are just selling the stuff. But I would say outside of apparel, most other goods, long form copywriting still works. And that's my personal background. That's where I came from. I used to write, these long sales pages all the time. So part of it was just the need. Hey, I can't put graphics together, but I can put words together. But it's actually funny because my best converting email of all time is the longest email that I've ever sent. Like, I have an email that, and I'll forward it to you. It's incredibly long. I actually followed like a sales page structure to write it. And best converting email of all time. I've sent that thing maybe 15 times now. And it's that one email's made probably over 250 grand, I think, maybe even more than that. So, and this, this was something I saw kind of more recently too, is that there's not enough focus, I think, on copywriting in this space. Like, there is too much, I was just talking to a graphic designer the other day, and, they're saying a picture is worth 1,000 words. And, I'm just kind of laughing to myself, because I'm like, what else is worth 1,000 words? 1,000 words. And kind of as a frame of reference, it's all story. And that's where I think people get misaligned. And one of the best examples I've heard is, you're the Yoda to your customer. And so many people get caught up on the brand, and it's, me, instead of you. Yeah.
And I think there's got to be some inbox fatigue too, when you're scrolling through your inbox and every email looks the exact same, because it's just images of a bunch of random crap and then a couple blurbs of paragraphs here and there, versus you see yours, it's like very in depth, lots of sort of content and education. I think it probably depends on the product too. Like, a t-shirt doesn't really need I don't know, a biography about it, whereas this is a little bit more specific to a certain like application that requires that level of education and storytelling.
Yeah. So, the other side there too, that a lot of people forget, is you're trying to convert the customer, right? So if you have, this line graph, you're trying to educate them along this path, and at the very end is to get them to purchase. So I have emails where it's 2 words. Hey, it's a freaking sale. Click the button. Yeah. And that's how I start every single sale, because guess what? That's when I'm going to get the most clicks, and I want to stand out of their way and just let them click and get over to the sale. But as I get further into it, let's say a 4-day sale, I want more education because I'm getting a 25, 30% open rate. You're getting what, 2% click rate? So I look at it as, hey, I have their attention. I can sell them in this email. I can give them more information and actually get them to, consume it and then buy it.
Yeah, that makes sense. What percentage would you say of people coming through like your site, and maybe you don't know this off the top of your head, but in your welcome flow, like where do most of the conversions come from? Is it like immediate, like people are grabbing your welcome offer and going right to purchase? They're not even interacting with emails? Or is it like email 4 is when they finally make the leap and you see a conversion spike?
Yeah, and I don't know if this is an e-commerce thing, but I tend to see with leads, especially, like I'd say there's almost like a 72-hour window where you're getting a lot of conversions. And then there's maybe another 30-day window where you're getting those other conversions. But we have a pretty active broadcast system. We're sending broadcasts, I'd say every 2 to 3 days, depending. And when we do do a sale, we're sending a lot of emails, and that, those are always cleaning up. So it's hard to really say, with those kind of new leads, but we've, definitely seen good success.
What are some of the ways that you're like segmenting your customers?
Honestly, we run a smaller team, and I have engaged buyers, engaged leads past 120 days, some particular filters for iOS, but we're not super deep. If I had a larger team and I was sending more segmented emails, I maybe would, but I was just listening to Ezra podcast, and it's like, the reality is like, no one really cares that much. Do I think you can email too much? Definitely, for sure. But if someone's like a customer, like especially in e-commerce, they're incredibly forgiving. Like they know you're trying to sell them stuff. And we send lots of content emails as well too. We're sending blog content all the time. So we're actually giving the customer something. Whereas, if most brands, everything is just a pitch, there's a different relationship between the sender and the person.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of brands, and even myself, frankly, like the concept of segmentation and personalization is great, like fundamentally, but there are challenges with it. Like, for one, having the resources to do so. Second, is your list even big enough? Because if I create a segment of everybody who's left a 5-star review, purchased 5 times or more, and has this particular, car type, then you might be left with 100 people, and then it's just not even worth it, because you're not going to be able to take anything away from that. And I think it would be interesting to see, and maybe this has been done before, but to really like aggressively test whether or not some of these personalization things truly have the substantial lift that we think they do. I think there's definitely merit to it, but then also you don't want to kill yourself when you have limited time. And you got to go focus on like getting your product into retail too. How the hell are you supposed to create 85 different segments for your email campaigns?
Yeah. And we're in an ideal world with infinite time. I would have a segment for every single product, and I'd have an email flow for every single product. And I'd have blog posts and, pixeling and retargeting funnels, and they would all kind of, I look at them as funnels, and I'd send you down a path for every single one, but that's also just not the reality. And then the other harsh reality is almost always, if I promote my hero product, I'm going to make more money than my other products. So from a revenue and profit standpoint, it's also hard to say what should get the push. But that's where I'll kind of include micro sales. We'll launch things on Amazon. So I'm always kind of trying to shift the love around and, get buyers in different products that maybe, hey, they would repeat purchase this product. So like, let's try to get them on a tire shine, because I know tire shine is one of the top selling categories.
Yeah. Do you see a lot of like customers doubling or tripling up on the same product, or are they exploring different product categories and product lines after they make that first purchase?
That's another area where we're playing with a intricate dance, because we do sell the 3-bottle pack so often and the 5-bottle pack. And, if you buy a 3-bottle pack of ceramic spray, which is our flagship product, if you have one car, that could last you over a year and a half plus. Now on the other side, you have someone that has 3 cars and maybe they like to clean their car a lot, so it goes out. So I've always just kind of accepted that those metrics are a little bit all over the place. And that's again why I kind of go back to more of a kind of blast approach where I'm just kind of always bouncing around on what we are pushing. But we do, like, if we launch a new formula or, a new coating, so we went from mirror shine to ceramic sprayed graphene, which is stronger, something new will always do very well for us.
Got it. That makes sense. I think like we did one thing with one of our wine clients where we just asked the customer when they need their replenishment reminder via SMS, and they reply, and then it branches them down a certain path. So I think it's like 2, 4, 6, or 8 weeks. And then depending on how they reply, then they just go down that path and they automatically get reminded. I think that would be something that could potentially be interesting. And I wonder if, like, have you ever thought about getting into like quizzes or any of that stuff?
So we have dabbled. That's some of my background. So we have a ceramic coating calculator quiz, which is kind of fun. Gives you an idea of how much it costs to ceramic coat your car. That one does really well on new leads because it's legitimately interesting. And then we had like a more minor detailing quiz that did perform well. It's just one of those things, again, kind of bandwidth to really make it work well. You really got to invest the time there. And that's one of those things that's been on the bubble. But we've had enough kind of success elsewhere that haven't doubled down there.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that we work through with a lot of our clients is just prioritization. So like there's like 16 different things that you could do. And for each thing, there's probably 3 or 4 different tools that you could use for it as well. So it's really like narrowing down your focus and being concentrated with your efforts because everybody has limited resources. So
yeah. And there's a Stoic principle I like, which is more wood, less arrows. And that's kind of always been my approach is, hey, let's do what we're good at and let's really focus there and let's not spread ourselves too thin. I had a buddy that has a, detailing brand too. And he's like, how come your Instagram sucks? And I was like, because I hate Instagram. And, can social drive sales? Yes, but we have a 45 to 65 plus demographic. They don't care about our Instagram. If I was a younger brand, I'd have a hip Instagram.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think understanding that, like, you see it all the time with brands, especially when they first get started, they open up like 7 social accounts. It's like, okay, so you're going to have a strong presence on all of these very unique platforms. Like, good luck. Pick one, maybe 2, do those very well, and then you can branch out from there. I think it's the same thing for any concept with your marketing.
Yeah, and it's no one really cares. I think that's kind of the dirty little secret is, and just that kind of social traffic, the amount of investment I see some people putting into that stuff. I'm like, you have 3 posts a week to your Instagram. You've never done a landing page. And I'll tell you which one's going to shift the needle more, right? So it's all paid traffic and email, in my opinion, is the 2 biggest drivers. If you can convert well enough on paid traffic, so now you have a scalable brand, and then you need email to increase profitability, increase that LTV.
Yeah, I think where social can be very impactful is when you have such a great product, people love your brand so much that they just like share the shit out of it across all of their networks. And so you have like a TikTok, you're getting tagged in a bunch of stuff. You're not really spending a lot of time doing like content, but you're getting all that UGC. That's where you can see some of the network effects start to bake in.
Yeah. And I mean, if I was an apparel brand, Instagram would be a more massive focus because it's a visual product and it's a visual platform.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a few little fun tips here on email, social proof emails to that point. Those do incredibly well for us. One of the easiest things to write, I just take a customer review, slap a photo together, use their headline because now they're saying it. I'm not saying it. I almost got in trouble one time because the headline was like, I can detail in my wheelchair. And my partners were like, what are you writing? I was like, it was a customer testimonial. I only got to send it once, but social proof emails work incredibly well for us. And we use our blog content for SEO. We get organic traffic, but then we also slap that back into our emails. And that's been some of our highest click rates ever. And then one of the things too, especially with iOS, I learned this a while ago at High Level Mastermind. And if you want to inbox better, get replies to your emails. So about once a year, give or take, I'll do some sort of campaign where I will get customers to reply to me, and then I'll even typically reply to those customers. And what this does is it's similar to if a customer like labels you or creates you as a contact. So it's telling these email service providers, because email is a communicative channel, typically, it's not a marketing channel. So by doing that, it's pretty easy to get 300, 200, 400 replies, and no one is whitelisting you. No one's doing that kind of stuff. But this is a way that you can then get your ratio up.
That's I've never done that before. That's something that I think would be pretty valuable. We've done like the most successful emails for us, actually, now that I think about it, are always from the founder and text-based, and they just have maybe like an image of like it's a personal email, and those have much higher response rates and click rates and everything.
Yeah. That long form email I had was, written from myself. It had pictures of me. Like, it was very personal, more like me to you.
I just don't get why it's such a struggle to get brands to think outside of this like brand over everything mindset, where like everything has to look 1,000% on brand and beautiful. And it really can sort of stymie the ability to act quickly and iterate. Like, for example, if I were going to start my own brand, I would just always use the Klaviyo drag and drop builder versus having to do everything in Figma and like dragging. It's just takes longer. And what is the actual real return there? Because when we do an A/B test between something like that and the text-based outperforms it. So there's just, I don't know why, but there's just this mindset that brand has to take priority over everything else.
Yeah. I mean, and I kind of joke, it's like your brand is revenue. Everything else is just kind of a joke. It's just being cute. And with all that being said, while I am direct response, I love beautifully designed things. I do like investing the time there and good photography or videos. And, we invested heavily into our creative and some of those other aspects. I think it's just like, I don't know, keeping in mind what is the actual product and what does it do and what benefit does it provide to the customer. And, I think you can just get way too caught up in having a pretty brand, and no one cares. Again, no one cares. Like,
I think that's going to be the title for this podcast. Nobody cares about your brand, personalization. What was the other one? I'm blanking on what the first one was, but
landing page. Other fun one on email. Do you know what the 2 best sales days of the month are?
Sales days of the month.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Not
typically
day of the month. Holy shit, I have no idea. When do people
get first and the 15th?
Yeah, okay.
Yep. First and the 15th. I learned that one in a super high level mastermind. It was kind of funny. Your results may vary, but when people get paid, they spend. Like, for example, best example there was when the stimulus checks came out. I just run an Easter sale the weekend before. And it was actually a friend of mine who I was like discussing this with. And they're like, well, why don't you just run it back? And I was like, that's not a bad idea. Reran the exact same sale for 48 hours only and made, if theoretically I made 100K in profit on the first sale, I made like 60K on the second one. Because all these people that saw these products that they wanted to buy, couldn't buy, now have $2,000 or whatever it was, and worked like gangbusters. I think I even reused some of the same emails. I've never been so blown away.
I mean, that makes sense though. Because if you have the money and you're able to spend at that point. But do you do anything like buy now, pay later or anything like that?
We've dabbled, again, because we live in this landing page world. It's never really, because we used CartHook previously. So we're using kind of single page checkout. So buy now, pay later didn't play nice. So it's only been more recently that we've been in more of a kind of a native checkout format. So we dabble, it's there. I think we have Afterpay set up. People can do it, but it's never really been something that we've pushed as much. I think as Shopify releases more native features around there, I think it could be more beneficial.
Do you use ShopPay?
We do use ShopPay now, because we're not in that one. I miss CartHook, honestly. That was the worst day of my life when they sunsetted that thing. So
how much does your conversion rates drop by switching away from a one-page checkout?
So it's hard to say because this was right around iOS 14 was also happening. Okay. But the double-edged sword of both, we felt tremendously.
Yeah, I can imagine. I wonder what you could probably still build your own like custom checkout with Shopify's APIs.
We've dabbled, but you really can't. You can't quite get the control and the simplicity that we did have with Cart Hook, as well as split testing. That kind of thing is almost impossible. So it's harder because we did kind of mess around there, but it was harder to really see, is this getting the results, as well as like the technical overhead, because it's just one of those things like, is this breaking in some way, or is this not as connected as we would like?
Rather have a little bit less of a converting checkout than one that doesn't work at all. So
technical overhead is real. So I have the first lander I created was kind of off this basic formula, and then I took that same thing, and that's what created our first video and video sales letter, which got us into that 8-figure range on YouTube, into retail, all these other things. So pretty simple headline intro. So for example, this one was care about your car, check this out. I'd use probably a different headline on the actual page. Then we'd highlight the problem. So for example, waxing takes too long, car is always getting dirty, cleaning every week. Solution: here's our unique product, quickly applies, longer protection, more shine. Then we go into the benefits, social proof, our guarantee / what makes us different. And then we pitch the offer, right? Hey, you're going to get 15% off if you order within the next 48 hours. Or if you buy 3 bottles, you're going to pay for the price of 2 and you get 1 free and free shipping. And I just whiteboarded that out, and that's what became the first lander. And the first lander worked gangbusters. This was like ClickFunnels Zipify days, and those landers are very slow. And then turned that into my own video, like shot it with a friend for free, shot myself in front of a bad white backdrop, edited it myself. The audio is bad, but I was just trying to get it up there. I didn't realize that we were going to run the same video for the next year and a half. And it took us pretty far.
That's awesome. Very very DIY bootstrap startup of you.
Well, and to your point of brand, that's that kind of thing would have never got okayed by some people, because it's not brand enough, it's not nice enough. We went and spent $50K plus on a really fancy, nice, well-shot video. And I think there's different reasons why it worked. I think part of it was the product timing. So not to take away from the agency or anything, but that video didn't flop. Like the first 5 videos we filmed were just kind of this escalation of me, running and gunning with the guy behind the camera. And it worked, and it kept working. I mean, again, literally that video got us into retail. So I think, and what was funny is it got us into the YouTube beta accelerator program. We actually turned it down because they had weird requirements, but they were saying, we actually think the reason why this video works is because it's almost underproduced and it feels more natural. It feels more native, which we're seeing now a lot more with TikTok and the emergence of UGC.
Yeah, I think one of my previous episodes, we talked about influencers with the founder from Gatsby, and authenticity is so important in everything, because like the bullshit detector for consumers is increasing every year as they get inundated with marketing and they're just more used to shopping online. And so you really need to tap into that authenticity. And it sounds like your videos that you originally did were maybe a little bit more on the authentic side, whereas the really well done, like professionally shot one actually was detrimental.
Yeah. And it's, with marketing in general, part of it's putting stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks and reiterating. And that's where I think if you're kind of swinging for home runs, it's not going to work the same. And if you are holding yourself to this too high of a brand standard, you're also, you can find some trouble for yourself.
Yeah. Customers like fun brands, unless, I don't know, you're spending thousands of dollars on like a super luxury product. I think tapping into being a little fun, having a person, like a face of a brand nowadays is super important too. Even for non like e-commerce brands, whether you're like an agent
I completely agree,
or you're a technology platform, like there needs to be somebody who is looked at as like the face, the one leading the charge, not only for like external, but also internally too. So
it humanizes it.
Yeah. We've tried to get as many of our brands as possible to do that. Some have been more responsive and receptive than others, I would say. because there's also like this old school mentality where like, I don't want to be in the public. I don't want to be public facing. Like if you look at some people's LinkedIn's, generally who are a little bit older, they're like, it's like a ghost. They might be like super, super successful and have all these crazy businesses, but they're just not into like the content generation and sort of the thought leadership that the up and comers are right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's, I think it's part of the reason why Tesla is at where it's at, or, Steve Jobs and Apple. A lot of these larger brands have some sort of front facing persona, because that's, at the end of the day, we're all humans. We connect with other humans, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, when you think of the most successful companies in the world, I immediately think of the founder or the founders. So that makes a lot of sense.
That's where the connection is.
Well,
I have one last funny tidbit before we run. I don't know where you're at on time.
We can stay for as long as you like, but
no
we're already over the usual time. So let's hit them with this last tip, and then
and then
we'll
just kind of a note, like, because you got to have that hero product, and that's what you're going to scale on. You got to have that one product that's super dialed in. The other products build the brand, but you have to have your Lululemon's leggings. And I love this example of Starbucks. It's like, have you ever had a better cup of coffee than Starbucks? Of course you have. Starbucks simply took espresso, a product that was actually created in 1903. Starbucks was created in 1971. Starbucks is worth what, $100 billion now from a 70-year-old product. So I think people sometimes do get caught up on that, have to have the greatest, newest, best product. Not necessarily. It's about the marketing and the other things that go into it that then help create that product.
Oh, that makes sense. Well, thank you for coming on. This is probably one of the more, I'd say, practical like podcasts that we've had yet, with some really actionable advice for any brand owners or even agency owners listening to take in and potentially roll out. I'm excited to see all of the text-based emails I'm going to be receiving over the next month as people try and dabble in the non-image based land of email marketing. So
Kettle and Fire is a good one to look at. They do a pretty good job of keeping super simple, on brand, but they give you some text.
I'm going to go sign up right now.
Yeah.
Well, before we hop off, can you let everybody know where they can find you and Torque online?
Yeah. Torque, easiest way, torquedetail.com, of course. With myself, Dan Sweeney on LinkedIn. I think it's Sweeney Daniel for like the / URL. If you guys know Brandon, you can probably find him through there pretty easily. And, I love talking about most of this stuff. So feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn and ask me questions.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. As always, this is Brandon Amoroso. You can find me at brandonamoroso.com or electricmarketing.com. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Congrats.